Okay, we've taken our show on the road, or at least via train tracks, and we find ourselves in London, Ontario, Canada. Let's be cheeky and call it the real London. We're visiting with someone for whom I personally have a great deal of respect and fondness. He's unapologetic and unwavering in his convictions, and I love his creative juice when it comes to unique forms of activism. Please welcome Jason King, proprietor of Plant Power Solutions, to Calling All Vegans.
Thanks, Sue.
Hey, Jason, great to have you on board.
Thanks, Alex.
So we're sitting here in the rain, but
We're going to fight on through as quickly as we can.
that's the vegan way, right? My whole life, I've made non-human animals my priority. Like many people, you came a little later to the party, so what's your story? What's your story?
Well, my story is I was just as
Empty
speciesist.
hot dogs from Plant Power Solutions. Empty hot dog.
No hot dog. All
Hot
gone.
dog here.
Enjoyed. Yeah, so my experience was I was just as indoctrinated with speciesism as anybody else. I grew up thinking everything was normal in this society. But I started watching some documentaries, and I ended up watching a documentary on CBC called The Cove, and I was just like in tears at the end of it, and I didn't know why. Couldn't understand. And so a couple months later, my daughter was about to go for a field trip to Marineland. She says, "Dad, we're going to Marineland for our field trip this year." I'm like, I watched a documentary about that, and that was like, that's a really bad place. I'm sure that the school's making a mistake. I'll just go talk to them, and we'll clear this up, because they can't take you there. That's horrible. They treat animals very badly there. And so I went to the school, and I talked to the principal, and he's like, "So this is a moral thing for you?" And I'm like, you know what? That's exactly what it is.
There you go.
It's an issue of morality. And I thought, this is the key. Like, this is it. He's going to realize it. And he goes, "Oh, we don't really do morals at school. It's educational, and I don't have any influence on the teacher to change her mind." And so I started looking online. I discovered Sea Shepherd and MAD, Marineland Animal Defense. And so I started to kind of like dabble in educating myself about these issues. And so I got involved with MAD. I went to Marineland. I was there for the big day that we shut it down. And I just started to get more and more involved. I became a member of Sea Shepherd's onshore crew. And with my daughter's class, we invited some of her classmates over, and they watched The Cove. And at the end of it, I said, "What do you think?" And they just said, "Yeah, it's sad, but we still want to go with our friends to Marineland." Right? So I realized
That's a little disappointing.
it is, right?
My
So
God.
my daughter was the only one that actually boycotted the trip. She stayed home, and that was that. That was also the summer where the Sun, was it the Toronto Star, came out with a series of articles about Marineland. And I'm glad to say that because of our actions, we didn't stop that trip. But in the fall, the first day of school, that teacher saw all of those articles, and she saw the media about Marineland. And she came to my daughter and she said, "You know what? I saw what happened at Marineland. I'm never organizing that trip again."
Wow, nice. Well,
Right.
my kids, when they were small, the old Marineland commercials used to be, "Everybody loves Marineland." My kids used to say, "Everybody hates Marineland," like trying to please mommy, right? I'm like, yes.
Yeah. So that experience was the thing that kind of like hooked me, and I realized that if you're passionate about something, and if you can remain convicted to seeing something through, you can have influence, and
Yeah.
you can make change.
That's right.
So we didn't get the change we wanted, but we did affect some form
Yeah.
of change, right?
Well, you flicked a little
Yeah.
seed in the hole, I guess.
Right.
and-
So at that time, I was vegetarian for environmental reasons. I have a history of working in animal agriculture. As a teenager, I grew up in the country. I did chicken picking.
Yeah.
That's what they called it, where we go in and we take the birds out of the cages. That was a horrible thing, and I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I only did one day, and I didn't understand why I couldn't go back. Physically, I could do the work, but there was just something inside me that couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know that until later in my life. But so I have a history in animal agriculture. I was a former hunter, and so I knew what happens to non-human people in animal agriculture, and as we use them as objects. I knew that,
Yeah.
but I could not. When I was invited to become vegetarian with my partner at the time, I was like, I can't do it for the animals, but I'll do it for the environment. And that
Well, you
was,
did it. Like,
I did it.
That's,
right. I did it.
It's one of
But
those.
I did it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of those things that the animals really don't care why you stop using them.
Yeah, that's.
But two, once you take that step back and you're no longer actively using animals, then you have an opportunity for some self-reflection to start to make those connections.
Yeah, and you
that
do your
a lot of people just
research
have a
and
really
stuff.
hard time
Yeah.
making that connection because they're literally
In it.
participating in at that moment,
Right.
and only upon that opportunity
Yeah.
of stepping back can you start
Yeah,
to
we'd
reflect
all
and make
love
all the
everyone to
connections.
say, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
vegan because animals shouldn't be exploited," But anyway, but if you like, feel free to say whatever you like. That's just
Yeah.
what we have to say about it.
So like I was saying, I was a vegetarian at the time, and so I got more involved with Sea Shepherd, and I was doing work for them. Bob Timmons was the president of the Canadian chapter out of Toronto at the time. And it was I can't remember the time, but it was like end of October, early November, about this time of year. He just called me up out of the blue and said, "So you're a vegetarian, eh?" I'm like, yeah. Isn't it great? Like
mean he
I'm
didn't-
awesome for
he
the
didn't end it
animals,
with,
right?
Arsehole.
No, he didn't.
He was.
But that ensued an hour-long conversation between the two of us, and the next day I was just vegan, like through and through. Like
Yeah.
there was no. I was just like, holy crap! I'm still a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
I'm still not there.
I know you think
right?
you're doing, because I was a vegetarian for whatever 30 years or something 27 years before I became totally like plant-based, I'm saying. And yeah, like I thought, oh, I'm doing everything here, so good, look at
Right.
me,
Yeah.
look at me go.
I took the other route and jumped headfirst into the shallow end and watched Earthlings, and by the end of the movie, that was it.
That'll do it. Not a movie I've had the pleasure of
It's
just
like-
yet.
yeah.
Anyway.
So, what were some of the physical and psychological changes that occurred when you made that connection and switched over?
That's an interesting question. Very deep.
We're only an hour show.
Physically, I can honestly say the first thing is, like, with regards to the dietary changes, I can tell you that I ended up being quite obese through my late 20s and early 30s. Bad diet, no physical activity because of the nature of my work and that sort of thing. But I can tell you, like, very quickly, I realized without the dairy, I was able to regain a lot of energy and a lot of, like, I started losing weight just naturally.
Yeah.
And yeah, so physically, I started to feel my life coming back to me, where, I'm almost 50 now, and I feel like I'm better than I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
It just,
I get you.
I have so much energy now, which allows me to, do all the things that I'm doing,
Yeah.
including running my business, which is a part-time thing, but a full-time job, right? And then psychologically, that was the most impressive thing to me, was the psychological change to my mindset and my ability to expand my horizons on what is ethical and what is moral, and seeing beyond that. For instance, I'll tell you a little story. I also got involved in the very first thing after my involvement with Marineland was I started to work with some local peeps here in London on a fur campaign, right? And prior to this, I was a very straight edge, narrow-minded person, and I thought stay away from people with tattoos and piercings and colored hair, right? I was very narrow-minded. But after I made the psychological leap to starting to expand my horizons on on broader issues of including non-human people in my morality.
You realize the freak show isn't so bad? Huh?
No.
The freaks aren't so bad?
No, you start to realize that society creates all these imaginary false barriers.
Absolutely.
And there's a purpose to doing that, right? And so I started thinking broadly on why was I conditioned to think that these individuals were to be excluded or thought differently of, right? So barriers started falling off of my shoulders and out of my mind. So I became a more well-rounded individual and a better earthling by broadening my perspective on who should be morally included, because society set up all these barriers around speciesism. And I found when I started dismantling my speciesism in my mind, like it was just natural that all of those other barriers around humans just also fell apart, because speciesism is the founding feature of all oppression.
Absolutely.
So when I started dismantling that, all of the other oppressions that had been built and conditioned in my mind fell away as well.
And for
Wow.
any of our viewers that aren't familiar with speciesism, can you give us a nutshell definition?
Sure. This is my favorite one. It is the systemic oppression of non-human animals by humans, specifically around the human supremacy. Very susceptible, very simple, because I like that one for the particular reason that it clearly articulates who the victims of this oppression is and who the oppressors are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because a lot of people tend to rope humans into it and saying, well, humans are animals too, therefore. But that's not speaking specifically to the oppression that humans perpetrate on
Yeah.
non-human people, right?
That's right.
We need
Everybody
to make that
wants
focus.
to get their agenda in there somehow, right? It's like, well, no, this is
Yeah.
how it is.
So things like rivers and corporations and those type of things
Lakes.
are lakes, can be people in the eyes of the law.
Right.
Yet, to my knowledge, although like
Oh, wait, you were
animals,
just
I was going to
reading
say,
about one.
although I was just reading on my way over here, what was it, Pablo Escobar's hippos?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are now considered people, but most non-human animals in the eyes of the law are not considered.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit on
Pablo
Sure.
Escobar, hippos
Yeah.
are people too, right?
Yeah, humanity is so speciesist that we will recognize the importance, and it's attributed to our own interests, of protecting non-human homes, but the individuals living there do not get the same moral consideration and personhood. We literally have fish living that are like they're sentient beings. They're comparable to us, but we will give personhood to their home, but deny them personhood
I
and
know,
moral
it's
standing.
nuts.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. You are convinced and have great arguments for the necessity for animal activists to refocus the animal liberation movement into a social justice movement against speciesism instead of just pushing an agenda based on a partial solution, i.e. veganism. Discuss.
Sure, it's a huge bone of contention. It's a real problem in our movement, but we really need to think critically about what we've done, where we're at now, given our goals, and what direction we want to have, and when we want to achieve our goals. Right? Do we want most of the time, the people in the animal rights movement, they say, well, we're all for liberation, but it'll come eventually through baby steps. And if that's your mindset, if that's your goal, then you'll never achieve it, because it's always second nature. It's always like it's a wishful thinking kind of thing. It's like we'll do what we can now, and then we'll hopefully eventually get to this point. Where if you look at any social justice movement, they take a hard stance. They outline, they're very specific about what their goal is, and they make a demand of society and say this is what has to happen. And all of those little things that happen on the way there, those are inconsequential, because you got to push the goal. So the actual movement needs to look at the fact that the modern era of animal liberation or animal rights it's about 200 years old. And honestly, we really haven't achieved anything. Every single species is still subject to being human property. We haven't moved anything there. It's starting to come around, but we need to up the game and push
Yeah.
it even harder. So
Definitely.
if you look at how the animal rights movement is now, it's basically focused on welfare. And that is actually an oppressor interest, because who defines the parameters of what good welfare is? It's not the animals themselves, it's the oppressors. And why do we do that? We do that because we have a psychological need to know that they're being treated better so that we can continue oppressing them,
Yeah.
right? Animals have one interest, and that's not to be objectified and used at all. And that's kind of what veganism should be about, but we've watered it down to be about less harm.
Yeah.
When we do that, we're appealing to oppressor interests, human interests. So when we talk about cruelty and we talk about welfare and treatment and conditions, we're not actually investing in the most we can do for non-human interests. We're actually appealing to human interests. And so long as we do
What
that,
else is new, huh?
right. It may be really hard for some people to accept this concept, but it really is the crux of the problem of the movement. And if you look at social justice movements, they don't do that. They don't appeal to the oppressors. They just say, these are the conditions that we want changed. Like, this is the thing that we want changed in society. And we don't care whether you love us. We don't care if you are disinterested in us or if you hate us. We're going to expect justice from you, right? And that's where the movement needs to go. We need to be justice oriented rather than human-centric focused.
Absolutely.
So what about the fight for animal rights is very unique in the history of social justice movements, like you've said. Historically, employing intersectionality between the struggles of human on human oppression is a win, right? But is mixing anti-speciesism and intersectionalism the best strategy for the animal rights movement?
So I really appreciate intersectional thought process because it is a very key part of anti-speciesist approach. Because like I described to you already, I noticed a psychological benefit to ending, like dismantling my speciesism as affecting the way I thought about other humans. There's a net benefit to ending and dismantling your speciesism. So as far as intersectionalism is involved in this movement, I think that's where it needs to be focused. But the problem is a lot of intersectionalism is based on pushing the human interest ahead of the non-human interest. Lord forbid you actually suggest.
What the? See how committed we are? Come here, have your interview in the rain. Wow, this is cool.
You have to
Sorry
cut.
about that. Yeah.
We're just going to take
I couldn't help it. I just saw them. And hey, good to meet
Hey
you
guys.
Okay, so Mike and Jamie Jack felt sorry for us sitting in the rain conducting our interview, so we are now in their home.
What a wonderful abode it is.
Yes.
Party on, Sue.
Yeah, party
Party
on.
on.
Party on, Alec.
We've been having a lot of fun with these guys here, so now we got to get serious again. So there's been a great deal of controversy over the use of words like slavery, rape, Holocaust, and murder when applied to non-humans, even in the animal rights community. Each and every one of us is triggered by something, so sometimes no matter how benign or well-intentioned. Could you explain how it's speciesist to deny application of these words to non-human persons?
Sure. So it's very simple, actually. We use language. Language is a very powerful tool. You can use it to liberate, or you can use it to oppress. It's been used through centuries. The first thing that we do to somebody, or to a group that we marginalize and that we want to commit atrocities against, the first thing that we actually do is we demean them with language. It's the first step. So the first step to liberating others is going to be changing that language. But if we have set groups of people, humans, that are taking ownership of those words to continue the oppression of those individuals by not leveling the playing field, by allowing that word to be used for both humans and non-humans, then what we're doing is we're handicapping the movement to liberate those animals, because it's very important that we have access to the English language through across all spectrums to use those words to reference not atrocities against non-humans so that we can liberate them using our language. It's very simple.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, especially outside the animal rights movement, many people are calling other individuals who choose not to get vaccinated selfish, right? While simultaneously not recognizing that it was decisions that they made by animal consumption, for example, that got us into the situation that we're in. What do you have to say to individuals that feel that way?
Yeah, so the problem with attacking people that are not wanting to participate in testing on animals and using them for the vaccine is that you're actually working against the basic foundation of what veganism and anti-speciesism is about. The zoonotic disease that led to COVID-19 is founded in speciesism. It's all speciesist related. And so what we are ending up doing is contributing to allowing humanity to continue to not suffer the consequences of their bad behavior and their speciesism. Mm-hmm. So this was like a totally missed opportunity for us to say, look, these are the consequences of your speciesism and your bad behavior towards our failed relationship with our fellow animals in the animal kingdom. You have to address these things and you have to change your behavior. Mm-hmm. So participating in going and getting vaccinated against this is basically allowing this cycle to continue. Right? We need to. This was a perfect example of vegans failing non-human animals once again in our efforts to liberate them.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about this a little bit off camera with Dr. Greger's work. Mm. Basically, in the 60s, most of these types of communicable diseases were pretty much on their way out, and only when we really intensified farming of livestock and started making factory farms, it really shot it up. And the history books are there. What are some of the ones, Sue? Some zoonotic?
Chickenpox,
mumps, SARS, MERS.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like they just and all of these instances skyrocketed once we started doing more factory farming, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Okay, back to speciesist language, because I'm always kind of torn on this one. I try to be strategic and speak the language of the rest of the herd, kind of pepper my speech with both speciesist and anti-speciesist terms, so I guess so people know what I'm talking about in one way. I don't want to use certain phrases like bodily secretions, and I prefer the more colloquial milk, because I don't want people to see me to get too bogged down with thinking I'm pretentious or pedantic, and they'll focus on that one word or phrase, and it'll kind of give them license to deflect, and the bigger message gets lost. And I feel this way because when I was a kid, I was watching this woman on TV, and she was talking about feminism. And what she was saying made perfect sense. I was right into it. I was like, yeah. Until she insisted that the interviewer call a man hole cover a person hole cover. And then all of her wonderful points were dismissed by the guy, and she was mocked, and they just focused on that. So you always give me lots of things to think about. So let me hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so when we're talking about changing the language towards one that facilitates a direction of society moving in the way that we need them to move to settle and repair the harm we've done with an oppressed and marginalized group, and those who we're talking about today is non-human people. Now, me using that term non-human person or people may cause your brain to trouble and trip over that for a while, right? But that's the kind of thing we need to
that tension, building that tension in society, right?
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
We need to create the tension you know, it's just like, if we're going to have change, it has to happen with our language first. And if we're going to have, if we're going to bring others into the moral majority, we have to use the same language that we would use to those that are already in that club, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's going to be an initial problem with introducing the language of liberation. So, one of the things that I think is valuable is the human world is actually not a real world. It's a very constructed construct. It's a construct of what we imagine and what we think to be. And so, you know, basically it's true that whatever we think is. We have the power to manifest what we think. Cars don't actually exist. They would never self-produce in a natural world. But because humans have thought of it and conceptualized it, we make it happen.
Well, this sure ain't Wayne's World, huh? You're blowing my mind, dude.
No, but you know, like, so in humanity right now, person and non-human animal does not exist. But if we just manifest it, we keep saying it over and over and over, and we force society to accept that term, we win.
Yeah.
All we need to do is get people to accept that non-human animals are persons. And all you got to do is get them to say it enough, and they will believe it, and it will be true. That's the reality of human reality. It's a construct. We just have to change the construct. It's like the Matrix. It's only there if you see it.
And we know, like as we discussed earlier, with things like corporations, rivers, and lakes, that we can adapt even on a legal level to be inclusive in what a person is.
Absolutely.
So if we can be inclusive for what a person is to include corporations, rivers, and lakes, and areas, then it makes sense that we should also be able to incorporate other sentient beings.
Absolutely.
It actually makes more sense than, as you said, the home of a sentient being being considered a person while the sentient being is not.
So in law, Gary Francione, he's a lawyer, and he talks a lot about animal law. And he always says that the basis of law is you treat similar things similarly, right? So if a human has all these qualities of sentience, we have sensations, we have emotions that are generated from those sensations, and if that is experienced in other sentient animals, then aren't we all equally similar to them? They are as similar to us. So it just doesn't make any sense that in law we're willing to extend personhood to things that do not have any similarity to us while excluding non-human animals, right? So it just makes sense that they should get personhood too. And the more we build towards pushing that agenda, I think we'll get closer to liberation.
Very good. Yeah, and I mean, we can still. How do you feel about us using terms like plant-based meat? Like to me, I feel like it's you don't want the carnies to have the monopoly on these kind of terms, right? And I mean, peanut butter could be next, right? They could start wanting to take our peanut butter away from us too.
Sure. So on the use of using plant-based, I've bounced around with this.
Or
a
even
couple of
vegan
times.
meat, whichever.
Sure.
I was meaning more
Right.
towards the term meat.
Yeah. So
where we take it as our own as well. It's like meat's not necessarily.
Just the flesh of an animal.
Right. So I've bounced around suggesting that vegans should use plant-based diet instead of saying vegan diet, because when we do that, we suggest that veganism, it leads towards thinking that veganism is a diet, right? But I've run into a problem, and that is when you say plant-based diet, when you do that, you exclude all of the exterior things like testing on animals, the things that are not in the ingredients, or it's not tangible, you can't actually see it. And therefore, we've got lots of vegans out there proclaiming that the Impossible Burger is vegan because it's plant-based. I totally can't deny that.
Right.
But it's not vegan because it's been tested on animals. And there's many other instances where that's the case.
Yeah.
Just Egg is another company. Hampton Creek chose to test on animals for. So it's almost, we have to insert veganism in there somehow.
Yeah.
You know, and so I like to say, I actually like to say, vegan food now. Like I'm back in that camp, simply because not doing it, by calling it plant-based, we're excluding all those other
nuances.
forms of oppression and
And
exploitation.
It's a big challenge, you know.
It is.
And I don't know that there's necessarily one answer that's going to fit all situations,
For sure.
right? And I mean, it's the same. Like you mentioned,
Well, we're the new kid on the block, right? We're kind of feeling our way along,
Exactly.
like this movement, right?
you mentioned the Impossible Burger, for example.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, well, what do you think about the Impossible Burger?" And I'm like, "Well, to be honest, I haven't eaten it because it was tested on animals, and I can't justify doing that when there's alternatives like the Beyond Meat Burger
Right.
that, you know, has very similar feel, taste, texture, and everything that is available that wasn't tested on animals." And I'm like, had we not had this conversation and you had gone over to Burger King and knew that I don't eat animals and brought me an Impossible Whopper, for example, I would probably have gone ahead and eaten it because your intent was trying to be sensitive to my needs, right? Your intent, you knew that I don't eat animals and that I'm doing it for ethical reasons. You didn't necessarily know the nuance of this product was tested on animals. But now that you know, go to A&W to get me the Beyond Meat Burger instead. Right?
Without that Unca sauce, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge on how to make your way around these sort of products.
Sure.
You know?
Like the harm has already been done, but it's a type of harm that isn't going to change the dynamics of what we're trying to accomplish. But we do need to send a signal to companies that support testing
Absolutely.
on animals. So the harm was already done by them buying it, but there's no animals actually in that product. So
Exactly.
right. So that's a building upon kind of like
Absolutely.
thing.
Well,
that
Well, it
we
makes
can
for a
work
good
on.
conversation,
Exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
it's one of those situations that I wouldn't go out and make the purchase myself because of the other ramifications with that. But if somebody made the intention, for my personal choice on that matter,
Yeah.
I would have understood the intent and gone with that because it didn't actually contain any animals. Right.
Right. Yeah. Like you hit on something when you said earlier. So when we go out in the public and we have lots of variety of plant-based foods to choose from, I always remind people that we have buying power, and it's really important that we maximize our use of that buying power. So, for instance, you suggested the difference between going to Burger King and A&W, but my preference is you always try to do the best that you can. So
Right.
you would try to go to a vegan restaurant
Absolutely, yeah.
at first, right? And then if there's nothing in that area that you can get to that where you can support vegan people that are building vegan businesses, which when you invest in vegan businesses, you're investing not only in that business, but that money is going into vegan people's pockets who are going to use that money to spread their money amongst other vegan
Definitely.
people.
So the
So-
synergy actions.
yeah.
Right.
So you maximize your buying power when you invest as vegan as possible.
Absolutely. It's funny because on that note, when A&W brought those out nationwide, and I'm like, yeah, I don't see myself going there often, but it's really great for those individuals that aren't in a town that has easy vegan
Exactly.
restaurants accessible, or
I am.
you're traveling cross country.
Sure.
You at least know that there's some place that you can go that isn't just going to be beer and fries.
Well, I like the idea too that I think it's more for people who don't eat vegan.
True.
And they get to try something like that where they have these great distribution channels and they have great marketing and stuff like that. They have street cred with people, and they go in and try it, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
this vegan stuff's not so bad, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that there's a place for all those types of things, but I definitely agree with you that, like, our, choices, when we can make a choice and support a vegan restaurant, vegan companies,
Right.
it's a more effective use of our time, energy.
Oh yeah, support
Right.
our peeps.
Yeah, because we want to send a signal to these companies, and they will dissect the marketing of their products like to death. So we want to show them that when they are in a strong market where they're competing against other vegan businesses, they lose every time. Right? We want to send a signal to them that you only win in markets where veganism is not growing.
Right. So on that note, I'm completely off script on this one now, but what about companies that are in the animal protein business but are dipping their toe in there? Like, for example, Tyson, Maple Leaf. These are companies that...
You have to go too after you say Maple Leaf, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
these are companies, obviously, that we have major issues with, but they also see plant-based protein is where the trajectory is going.
Right.
And this
Yeah.
is a personal decision, obviously, but what's your feelings on that? Do we support that?
No, we don't. Absolutely, we don't, because we want to make it a moral issue. We want to make it about the liberation of non-human people. We need to shut those companies out and show them that they need to. The only time we can support that sort of thing is when they replace items with vegan items. Okay.
Right.
We need them to say, we need A&W to go, well, we got a vegan burger. Let's pull off one of our other, our flesh burgers.
Right.
Or Kentucky Fried Chicken, they say, we got this fantastic vegan chicken sandwich. Let's pull off a menu item from our chicken sandwich. That's the only way we win, is if there's a net result on the other side, right? So we can support
Has to kind
companies.
of nullify it or whatever,
Yeah,
cancel
the
it.
goal
Yeah.
is not to add to the menu items, but to replace the violence and the oppression, right? So I could get behind that, but I cannot get behind a company that is just trying to take back market share that they've lost to vegans, because what we're doing is we're just supporting them to continue the process of destroying, animals and ruining lives and the planet and all that. So we got to be very careful when we support corporations that are in that move to taking that market share, because are they really doing it for the reasons we need them to? And for me, it's a matter of liberating a group that's oppressed. And until they see that, and until they start acting that way, that they are moving towards, liberating non-human people, and it'd be even great if they said that, we are changing our scale of our operations away towards plant-based proteins, because we recognize that we are oppressive. Like, we can't support them until that is the messaging.
Note to self, tell John to throw the Light Life bacon out of
Just completely changing gears here a little
Sure.
bit. Can you just tell us about some of the many different campaigns that you've either helped organize or been involved in? Just kind of...
the evil genius of Jason King.
Well-
And we actually have you have something coming up involving
Right. So I don't really like to talk about myself as an activist, because I don't like it being about individuals. But just to throw out there for reference for people to understand.
Well, it can kind of give people some
Inspire
ideas
people
too,
with some of the
like unique
possibilities
forms
of
of
things that can be done.
activism, right? Like
Sure.
some people go, "Oh, I don't know what to do," and then you say something like what you've been doing. It's like, man, that's cool.
Sure. So my first, I'll just tell you a little bit. My first foray into organizing my own stuff, except for the stuff with my daughter's field trip to Marineland and my participation there. my first activism was organizing a protest on RibFest in London, Ontario.
Yeah.
And a very unique situation came out of that. The owner of RibFest came out and said, hey, I believe in your message and I want you guys to spread it. And please come back next year. Give me a month's notice or call me back to remind me. I'll give you a free space at RibFest, in RibFest, and we'll give you a premium spot for free. All you got to do is guarantee that you're going to be manning your booth the full 5 days, 12 hours a day. And we were like, wow, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but we thought about it. And so we ran with it the next year. And we were there right up every year until it was shut down due to COVID-19. And we plan to go back again. We also founded, in the process of doing that, Animal Liberation Alliance London, which is an animal rights group in London, Ontario. I founded that with Chelsea Gross, who's now moved on to Seattle. Yeah, so that's kind of on the down low right now. I also got involved in organizing the Toronto Animal Rights March for several years, and I left that so that I could go focus on the starting up the horse carriage protest campaign in Niagara-on-the-Lake, where we're trying to get. And the interesting thing is, my friend Adam Sturr, through his organization At War for Animals Niagara, started that campaign, and he started it from a welfarist perspective, where they were talking about the cruelty, and they were taking measurements of the temperature outside, and they were saying how cruel it was for the horses. And I went to him after the fact that I was looking for something else to do, and I said, I got an idea. Maybe we could try this, but flip it, and do it completely from a anti-speciesist approach, where we just talk about how this is speciesist, and horses need to be liberated. They are not property. They are not things to be used. Instead of talking about and focusing on the treatment of them, which we clearly were not veterinarians, we couldn't speak to that. We couldn't validate whether these animals were being treated well or not. We just don't have that expertise. But we don't have to have expertise to say these sentient beings are not property. They are not things to be used.
Oh yeah, any dummy
Right?
should know that,
It's
right?
very simple. Anybody can say that.
And that took a turn. Like when you changed your messaging, that also had a direct effect on how that was being received around you, correct?
Absolutely.
The townsfolk
The
weren't
town,
too happy.
the
but
town was like extremely vicious against us,
Yeah.
and the reason I think it was is because they kept coming back saying, "But we treat them well. We treat them well."
Right.
And we just say, "But does treating a slave well justify the slavery?"
Right.
No, it doesn't. So they lost the argument because they were trying to argue something we weren't saying.
Right. So
They were
once
going with the common thing.
Yeah, once the messaging changed, then it's a lot harder to wiggle out of culpability.
Right.
When it's a direct correlation that they already agree with when we're talking about humans.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It got to the point where we were talking to people coming up to us that were just, they just hated us. And we'd have a direct conversation with them and say, do you think it's right to enslave somebody for their entire lives for entertainment purposes? And they'd be like, well, no. Well, then how can you justify doing it to horses just because they're a different species than you? Mm-hmm. Well, I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. You got me thinking something like I've never thought before. That's the key. That's the key to change. Is we planted a different seed in their mind that they'd ever thought of before. And I don't know what they're going to do when they go home and deal with that in their minds for the days and weeks to come. But they can never unhear it.
Absolutely.
Right?
On the topic of Adam, you and he a couple years ago were doing sort of workshops in Toronto.
Yeah. You guys know.
I
know.
was there.
I know. We have to pretend like we don't know.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? And are you guys planning on picking that up
Please,
again?
please do it.
Yeah, so COVID-19 kind of threw everything in the works, and I branched out into doing a completely different project, like becoming a business owner, which I'm sure you guys want to talk about.
Yeah.
Nah. But yeah, so we decided that this approach that we developed that was a great segue. The approach that that we developed over the course of 2 to 3 years in Niagara-on-the-Lake, we realized we had something. It was like we had over 70 media hits across the country from what we were doing in Niagara-on-the-Lake. There's probably not a person in Niagara region that doesn't know the word speciesism now as a result of our efforts. But we realized we need to teach other individuals, other activists, the new anti-speciesist approach and how to develop it and how to plan around it. And so we put together a small little workshop with a period of classes to help unlearn the ways of the past and help train individuals in thinking from a social justice perspective for the animal rights movement to move it forward and evolve, because it needs to be evolved and we need people to be receptive to that. So yeah, we put together this workshop. You guys hosted it. It was fantastic. It was a great afternoon.
That's right, we did. I forgot. I forgot that we hosted it. I knew I was there, but
yeah, and I'm very grateful for that. And yes, absolutely. I'm pretty sure I can convince Adam to come back. He was a fantastic person to work with. But you know, as I say, like, I'm always evolving as an individual with my activism and my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I already know, like, in the last year and a half, I've learned and developed so many more ideas that we really got to take it back to the basics and rebuild this whole thing again. But that's the beauty of evolving, is, you know, as long as you're evolving, so too do you grow and you change and you thrive in that environment. And that's the one thing I don't get, is everybody's like, imagine a brick wall and it's got Bill 156 on it, right? And everybody's like pounding on that wall. We got to get through. We got to get through. You know, bang, bang, bang. You know, we got to get in there. We got to do this. But they're putting up this wall, and we got to pound through the wall. Well, I'm just going around the wall through the
or
fence
climbing
gate.
over it, or
We
whatever.
have to be like water. We flow around the obstacles. So we got to find creative and diverse ways of when you know, they zig, we zag.
Exactly.
We can't allow them to put up these brick walls. We got to find other creative ways of doing other things, and that's the anti-speciesist approach.
Right.
You are always 2 steps ahead of them,
Right.
and that's how we did. That's how we did it in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yeah, you anticipate what their response would be, and then you
Right.
We
and you divert as soon as they put up that roadblock. You're like, I'm ahead of you.
Okay.
We're going this way.
And that's one of the things, like,
Yeah.
Right?
So, like, for instance, when they started trying to kick us off the corner, then we brought in 10 vehicles that were all labeled up, and we crawled through town,
what was
slowing
that
down
thing
the
called?
traffic.
Thunder?
Rolling Thunder.
Rolling Thunder.
Right?
That was
So
good.
we had.
See what I mean? Like, you have all these fun ideas.
And that infuriated them. They called the police on us just for driving through the town, and they tried to say, it was just ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Even the police said, we're not even sure if that's legal to do. And Adam said, actually, in the highway traffic. And the cop our liaison got back to him and said, you're absolutely right. I learned something from you today. And that's what we need to do. We need to be 2 steps ahead of everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I often find individuals within the activist community are saying, we need to do activism in this particular way, whatever that particular way is. Right? I mean, personally, I've always been of the opinion, if we try to say that there's only one way to do activism, we've already lost, because there's so many different types of individuals and different obstacles that we need to be able to
Oh yeah, people are wired all different ways, right?
And 2, if you've got a better way to do activism, show me how it's a better way and demonstrate it, and show the effectiveness of it, so that other individuals can then learn from that. Simply saying that
Armchair
your
critic.
way or my way or this way, this way is wrong, we've already lost the battle, I think.
Yeah. And so I have 2 thoughts on that. Number 1 is we have to be honest about what our goals are with the activism we're trying to achieve, because I've learned the animal rights community is not all on the same side as to what our goals are. Right. Mine is absolute animals, recognized as persons.
Yep.
Actual liberation from property status. And that's the direction I go in.
That's what I want.
But when I see activism, so it's the question is not what's the best activism? It's the actual question we need to ask is, what is maybe harmful to our progress, right? And we need to move away from activism that doesn't work. That's the real question we need to ask ourselves. What moves us towards our goal? What maybe impedes it, or even works counter to it?
Right. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's something that I've even fallen into. You get off on the sort of interaction.
We all have our
right?
favorites,
Sure.
right?
Right.
So-
But at a certain point, we need to also recognize this is feeding my ego and
Yeah,
isn't
it's just
actually helping us
self-serving.
achieving our goals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's a really easy to fall into that scenario. you know?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, from what I've learned, the most successful stuff is the stuff that doesn't make you comfortable. Don't say I do this because it makes me comfortable.
Yeah.
That's probably because it's ineffective and it's not leading anywhere. But it makes you feel good about the fact that you're doing something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, doing
know-
this show makes me very uncomfortable. So does that mean this is good activism?
I hear a lot of it's the least you can do from a lot of animal rights corporations. Like, do this, it's the least you can do for animals. But we really need to be asking ourselves, what's the most I can do with my resources and my capabilities?
Yeah, I think people should always be stretching, like push yourself outside of that little comfort zone.
Exactly.
You know?
So, I was just going to shift gears a little, and we touched base on it, the shop. Like, a lot of people talk about wanting to do it, plan on wanting to do it, but you've actually hunkered down and have done it. Tell us a little bit about the whys and the hows and the motivation for
that
it.
is one nice looking little shop. I'm a lime green fanatic, so I really loved it.
Yeah. The shop came out of an idea of actually my very first activism gig was organizing that protest on Ribfest. So over the years, we were constantly looking for products to sample to people, because what we would do is we would bait people into coming and trying our food, and then we'd hit them up with an animal rights message.
Right.
And engage them in that conversation. Some of those conversations went for hours. But we settled on this one product called citrus-infused riblet out of a small little shop in Mississauga. And it was like, no one ever heard of it. You can't buy it in the stores. It's like, it's just not, you can't get it unless you go to Mississauga. And so we used the product for 3 years, and every year I would go back to my friend Kathy, who owns Veggie Paradise, and I'd be like, so when are you going to be selling it? Because I always get people saying,
I want it.
yeah, people are like, this is fantastic. Where can I buy this? I'm like, you can't. We're activists. We're not trying to sell you anything.
Right.
So the third year, it was just like, so the same thing, right? Yeah, same thing. Like, we're not, I don't have anybody to sell it. I'm like, finally, I just realized sometimes you just got to be the person to do it, right? You got to stop
If the mountain
waiting for
won't come
somebody
to
to do it.
Muhammad, Muhammad's going to the mountain.
Right. So I thought, well, I guess I'm going to become a business owner.
But it's a great form of activism. We were talking.
Yeah,
about
we were talking.
Yeah.
I was explaining to you, like,
the little offshoots from it.
Yeah, it's been a very eye-opening experience, like unbelievable to me. But the other vendors in the market, some of them would come and patriate my shop, and they would tell me their woes of dealing with animal products, such as liquid egg. And I'm like, I just got Simply Eggless in. This could be a great product for you. Here's a bottle. Try it out. And then the next week he comes back. It worked fantastic. So if I can switch my business to being completely vegan, I can open it up to a whole, like, everybody can eat vegan. I can advertise it as cholesterol free. I can save money because the product doesn't go bad in 5 days. I can store it for a whole year. It stays in the refrigerator good for 55 days. I'm going to save a lot of money if I switch to a plant-based business.
Yeah, and if our government stops subsidizing the non-plant-based,
yeah.
like, think these products can go way down in price, and then people are going to be just ka-ching, ka-ching.
Right. So I found that he wants to switch to a completely plant-based food system. So, and then there's another vendor that that I know who's also does gluten free, but now he wants to dabble into. He's getting a lot of customers saying, "Do you have vegan gluten free?" And he's like, "No, I use eggs." So he's interested in the product. And just last week, he told me other people he's been telling about this are saying, "Wow, I could probably try
You're
it."
like a dealer.
Right? You feel like this dealer,
Yeah.
right? But so, I called Simply Eggless, or I didn't call them. I sent them like a form letter on their website
Oh, yeah,
saying,
yeah.
I got this situation where people are looking for this product, but it's too expensive. Do you have wholesale, non-retail packaging in bulk that I could help connect you with these people? Well, later that day, the CEO calls me. He's like, "This is exciting," right?
Right, yeah.
So I'm like making connections and using, the connections and my ability to collaborate with other people and put them. So things are working between the product manufacturer and a whole distributor called AMJ out of Brampton, and myself, and we're trying to put together a brand new, not even thought of distribution for Simply Eggless to replace eggs, liquid egg,
Wow.
in the London area. So this could potentially be,
Revolutionized.
yeah, we could, I didn't expect this. This is like, I just threw my hat out there and said, I'm going to start a business, see what happens.
It's like when you order fries and they give you gravy and you weren't expecting it. Like, I mean, isn't that a good thing, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow,
As long as
wasn't
it's
expecting
a
that.
mushroom or miso gravy, yes.
Yeah.
So like the
two
business,
favorites.
the business has been like fantastic in that way of just expanding my horizons on what more is possible. So I just started at the market. Like why I this summer I walked through the market downtown in Toronto. What's that big one?
St. Lawrence
St. Lawrence,
Market.
Yes. And there's no vegan place in there.
No.
Why doesn't somebody just do this there? I'll help them. If you're out there and you want to do this, call me. I'll set you up. I want no money from it. Plant Power Solutions in St. Lawrence Market. Let's make
Wouldn't
it happen.
that be cool?
That would
And
be
well,
awesome.
and like we spoke about, the I always got to go on my humans or herd animal thing, but that once somebody else does it, takes the plunge, then others just jump in afterwards. Everybody kind of sits back and like, oh, let's just see
Right.
what happens. Nobody wants to be the guy who sticks their neck out, right?
Right.
You're the guy who stuck his neck out, and now others,
Can
think,
synergy or
maybe
build off
I'll
of it, yeah.
open my own little vegan
On
bar.
that, the name Plant Powered Solutions.
Plant power.
That's
Plant
a good question.
Tell
Power.
us about
Do we
it.
say it power or power?
However you like.
I want power.
What's the goal of and in the name? What's the story behind that?
So I really hate when people call plant-based food an option or alternative, or any of these words that suggests that it is something separate or lesser than
Yeah.
of the. You're basically saying there's a premium product and then there's this, right? So I wanted to get away from that, and so I thought, what am I actually selling? And I'm actually selling a solution to many problems. The problem that I'm solving is animal liberation, right? I'm trying to work toward that end. So I always say, like, when people go to a vegan or to a restaurant, they want to say, instead of saying, what are your vegan options? What are your vegan solutions? Because you're telling that person there's a problem with the normal thing. The normalized thing is a problem. I want the solution to it. So
Ooh.
I built that into my name so that I could help spread that idea that plants are a powerful solution.
Very
I like
good.
that. Very cool.
Something I did notice in your shop was that the prices were quite a bit cheaper than anywhere I've ever seen.
Extremely cost effective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now I can hashtag Tofurkey if I say this. So when you buy Tofurkey, I've only seen it, the cheapest I've seen it, $4.99, and it was $4.75 on your shelf. So
That's awesome. And so we actually talked about this a little bit when we were in the shop without the cameras going, but tell us a little bit behind that. Why are they so cost competitive?
Well, because this is not it's a business, but it's a form of activism. So plant-based foods needs to be affordable and it needs to be accessible. And affordability is a part of being accessible, right? So I want people that are walking through the market, which is steeped in, like, for instance, it's at the Western Fair Market. It's steeped in animal agriculture. Right?
It is literally made of animal
It's
agriculture.
literally made of horsehair. The floor is made of horsehair. So, I've decided that, if I'm going to infiltrate these places where people that are not aware of plant-based foods are going to circle around and see my shop, they better come in and see that it's affordable and accessible. But also, there's a vegan community out there that needs to have access to their food. And so I decided that if I was going to do this, that Plant Power Solutions would succeed on bulk sales, like lots of sales of like as affordable as possible. So I'm hoping that people will help build my business through increased sales and continued patronage and bringing more and more people on to buy more and more product. And that's how it's going to grow, rather than selling to a very select group of people buying very expensive products.
Right.
So one other thing, actually, Plant Power Solutions actually started as a distribution company because I just wanted to help Veggie Paradise get their products in other stores.
yeah.
So there you go. Yeah,
Okay,
true.
so in my dealings with major
Dealings, there it
major
is.
companies,
Dealer.
right? In my discussions,
Okay, we'll play
major
along.
chains, I got the impression right away that their most important thing is making lots of money. So
Right.
I can see, well, I know what the wholesale cost of the products are, and vegans are being gouged
Right.
left, right, and center.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All across the board.
Yeah.
In like grocery stores, you're paying way more than you should. They are gouging you, and that's the reason that they have their products there, is because they know you're going to come there and buy it from them, and you're basically supporting the gouging by continuing to buy the products there.
Now, you just relocated within the market, correct? Because you were at a central location, and now you're off to the side there. And what was the major benefit of you doing that?
Yeah, so the benefit was there was a space available that was for the same price as one unit, but it was it had like a third larger space. So I was able to, increase the space I had,
Right.
and there was also plumbing, which meant I could open up a kitchen and sell hot food.
And so now, this was today the first day?
Today was the
the
big
first
day.
The first
You guys
day.
decided to show up on the first day that we started selling hot food.
And we
Damn,
got
that
to
was
enjoy one of those. That was the
That bad boy was a
Very good butcher?
Very good.
Yeah,
Or was it-
that was a very good butcher. The
Yeah.
banger one, British
Yeah, the
banger.
The very British banger.
Very
British
We
bangers.
had them on the show.
yeah. That was an awesome.
And I own
one.
stock in their company, so please do buy.
So
Very good
and
butcher food.
that was it seemed like a success when it was just about closing time and you were pretty much out of products on the heat grill there. So.
Yeah, today was very successful. Just quickly looking at the numbers at the end of the day, we were up significantly from last weekend, so I can tell that it's already making a difference.
It's a game changer, like people to just and think of the activism you can do with that.
Oh,
'Cause
my favorite part of today was reaching over the counter to give this like 10-year-old kid a vegan hot dog.
Right.
That meant the world to me. That was like, here's the future.
no toenails in that one, kiddo.
Exactly.
Don't worry.
So-
And you want to open even like a greasy spoon breakfast.
So the plan
Wouldn't that
is,
be nice?
Yeah, so the plan is
How's that sound?
the market has oh, it's walking distance. See you guys
Our
Saturday
studio
morning.
audience says do it.
We'll be waiting at the door.
We've been saying that London needs that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like the market opens at 8 a.m. on Saturday, and there's nowhere in town you can go for a breakfast experience in London for vegans. So I thought the ultimate goal is to upscale the food service to the point where we're serving hamburgers as well as, and then eventually, hopefully, late spring, early summer. I really want to wait till the restrictions are lifted on the dining, because I want everybody to have equal access to
Yeah.
that dining area.
That being said, it's kind of crazy because you started this during a pandemic.
Yeah, sure. I just said,
But he likes a challenge, okay?
I've not experienced operating a business outside of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Also,
He's an
to let you
expert
guys
now
know
at this.
that the upstairs is mostly vendors, and during the lockdowns, they forced the entire upstairs to be closed. So I operated, for the most part, my business from a table showing pictures of what my products were. And I would have to run upstairs and bring the products down to sell them downstairs. Most people just walked by me, not knowing, they thought I was a mail-in food business.
Yeah.
Right.
I order from you, and 6 weeks later I get some product. Right? They didn't know. So so we've been through some struggling times. But ultimately, the goal is to have a full breakfast menu so that vegans have a place to go.
Everyone's like, you have my attention.
Yeah, so I make fantastic blueberry pancakes, right? So we're gonna have pancakes. We're gonna have egg, English muffin, eggs, and you can have your choice of ham slices or the Beyond patties, or who knows what else, right? But you'll be able to sit down and have a nice breakfast. We'll do the tofu omelets, or scrambled tofu.
Yummy.
And omelets and everything that we possibly can.
Do you remember those old, it's hardly vegan, but those old ads on the radio for the old Hyde House? And they used to say, it's worth the drive to Acton.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
now it'll be worth the drive to London, right? Or
Maybe.
train ride. Yeah.
Maybe.
So
I saw you whooping up those goodies in the fry pan earlier.
Wait till the
so
next segment.
yeah,
Yeah, you guys can come down and do a breakfast scene.
That would be awesome.
yeah.
Shifting gears again. Sue was wearing hers earlier, but she took off because
my sweater's
we're
off.
inside. But can you tell us a little bit about the purple poppy pins and the story behind that and
Say
what's
that.
going on with that?
Say that
The
5
purple
times
poppy
fast.
pins? Yes.
Okay, so one of the other aspects of my business, and I'll get into this first because it winds up to the poppy, is I've always been passionate about supporting sanctuaries, animal sanctuaries. And the closest one to us is Cedar Row Farm Sanctuary. It's been operating in Ontario for over 20 years now. Fantastic people, the Pools, Pete and Siobhan, fantastic people, love them. And I always wanted that all of my activism that I do would somehow benefit non-human people, and Cedar Row would be the beneficiary of any financial things that I did. So immediately when I was opening Plant Power Solutions, the retail outlet, I realized here's an opportunity for me to help Cedar Row. And so I got them to give me their merchandise so that I could sell it through my shop. It just gave them another platform to show their stuff and sell it and move it, right? So since day one, we've been collecting merchandise sales and remitting them to Cedar Row. We don't take anything for that. But last year, Siobhan said, we have these purple poppies. And she said, can you sell these? I'm like, absolutely, I'll sell whatever you give me. And so she told me what they were for. And it's the purple poppy. Of course, we know what a red poppy is for. Purple poppy is the same thing, except it is to recognize the animal slaves that were forced into servitude for human conflict. So we drag not only innocent humans into war, but we also drag innocent non-humans into war. And we also turn the habitat and homes of many free-living animals into battlefields and war zones. And we massacre billions of animals through that process. So the purple poppy we wear as a commemorative thing to remember that non-human lives are lost during war, just as much, if not more, than human ones. And we need to remember that. And it's also a great talking piece because many people come into the shop and they're like, "Oh, purple, what's that for?" So it gives me the opportunity to explain.
Right, absolutely. And it's one of those things that the animals, the non-human animals, can't even consent.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
like I think most people agree war is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But at least the human individuals that are taking
no matter
part in
how
it
pressured they might be, they still
have
make a-
made the choice for whatever reasons to be there. But animals that are either having their land taken over through the war or being pressed into servitude for, bomb containment and sniffing this and transporting that, they
Right.
don't even have the option to
Yeah.
consent to that.
No, we
Absolutely.
don't give them. There are slaves. There are property. There are things to use for every purpose, including war, and it's just a tragedy.
Well, with Cedar Road, you're also the tips function on your point of sale system is benefiting them as well.
Yeah, we just started that this weekend. I learned how to turn the tips on
Oh.
on Square. So
It's a whole new world opening up for you now.
So I talked to my staff and I said, since we're going to be doing food service, typically businesses that offer food service collect tips. I said to my staff, I said, hey, are you okay with we collect, tips for Cedar Road because, we operate here with a living wage agreement between us. But are you okay if we collect tips for Cedar Row instead? And they said, absolutely, because they're both into, this as an activism project. I told them when I brought them on board, I said, this is not so much as building a business as it is building an activism project. And you guys are partners on that. This is what we're going to do together. I'm the business owner, but we're going to work together.
Like a team.
We're a team.
And you didn't even have to say, or I'll fire you. That's all that, right? That's good. That they're on board.
Right. And I really wish that other vegan businesses would do the same.
Yeah.
So did you want to give a little shout out to these two wonderful team members?
Your recent additions to your team.
Oh, yeah. So I got to tell you about this amazing person first who was my first, project team member, Morgan. And it's a very interesting story. It's funny. So during the big lockdown during the wintertime, I was sometimes really struggling to run up at the store, run up and down. And there was a whole bunch of people that wanted stuff. So there's a lot of people waiting. And Morgan was this young woman who was standing in the line, and I didn't even remember her, but she came up and bought something, and then she left. And then I got an email that night saying, I realized you're struggling there to manage your business. Do you need some help?
How sweet is that?
Right?
Yeah.
She's like, I could run up and down the stairs. And I'm
She's getting her steps in, right? She's got her Fitbit on.
Yeah. So Morgan, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Here's somebody very creatively asking for a job. I responded immediately and I said, I plan to need somebody when we go back into in-person shopping. And I expect that the business will be thriving enough that I can afford to have somebody else, especially because my career job, which I still do, requires me to work on weekends from time to time. So I said, honestly, I'm going to need somebody. Can I hold on to your information so that I can call you up, or so that I can approach you when the time comes? She's like, yeah, I'd love to be considered for a job. And I'm like, no. In my head, I'm like, no, I'm offering you the job. I deferred. Right? She was like, I have to still compete.
Yeah.
Like, no, you got it.
Yeah.
You were so creative and
Yeah.
you reached out. Definitely. And she wasn't even vegan at the time.
Oh, wow.
And,
I
went
thought she was
vegan.
just somebody in the crowd who felt sorry for you, wanted to run, be your runner,
Probably
your
was.
gopher. Yeah.
Probably was. But anyway, she's since gone vegan since I brought her into the fold.
See?
Right? And but anyway, I had her for a while, but then she's a university student, so she had to move out of town, which meant she's still a team member. She's still part of our social media, and we chat from time to time. I heard she was in last weekend when I wasn't there. And she's a wonderful person. So the first shout out goes to Morgan.
Very good.
But when she left, I had to replace her. So this is an interesting story. I used Indeed for the first time.
And why is that?
I used Indeed because it's a platform. It's a social networking platform, and a lot of young people are on it. And so I figured, well, this sounds like a good platform. I've heard my daughter used it to look for
Right.
jobs. So I figured I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, Monster's all washed up these days now,
Is it?
I guess. Everyone's indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I'm so disconnected. Until you had mentioned it earlier today, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, so I built my ad and I applied to be an employer looking for a job, and I put the ad out and it was like not getting approved. And then I got a message saying, we're not sure you're a legitimate business. Send us this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, I did that. And then they're like, well, we're not sure about this document because you're supposed to send it as a PDF, not as a picture. I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of a little funky.
Right.
So I sent it in, everything that they did. This went on for 2 days. They bounced me around from department to department. And I said, look, finally, what is the real problem? Like, you guys, I've satisfied everything you've asked me. Well, turns out in your ad, you're saying you require vegans to be hired. And we consider that discrimination. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I understand what you're saying, but I can't hire somebody that's going to come wearing a Canada Goose jacket and hang it up because I have vegan customers that are going to expect differently. I can't have somebody come with half chicken and pull it out on the counter when a vegan walks in and wants to talk vegan with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, we are very specific, creative individuals who need to communicate with other people that are selling vegan products who understand the philosophy behind what we're doing. And I need people that act like that and behave like that. So they said, will you change the ad? And I said, sure. So I just changed it to, you must have very good knowledge of veganism, right? So that allowed me to decide how much knowledge was enough knowledge.
Right.
But immediately within, then they posted my ad.
Put a
It went live.
chicken drumstick down on the counter and see if they go for it, right?
Well, they didn't have any problem with me because Indeed, you can actually list a number of questions that the candidates have to answer. One of my questions was, how long have you been doing it?
You got
And
around
they didn't
it.
have a problem with that. So I saw a couple of entries that came in first, like almost immediately. They didn't even answer that
NA.
question. They didn't even answer it. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, next. But within 6 hours of the ad being out there, instantaneously, I got Luke and I got Deanna at the same time.
We met Deanna today.
Deanna's a fantastic woman who's just like, I'm so happy to have her. She's a fantastic advocate, and she totally wanted to make a choice of, she's retired from her career job, and she now had the flexibility of picking something that she wanted to do and invest her time and energy and passion in something that she really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so,
Isn't that the dream, to
Right.
make money doing something you love, right?
Yeah,
Or
and-
like your passion.
and I'm so happy she picked to join the Plant Power Solutions team.
Because
she's
what else is happening right around now in London? The competition you got, well, not competition, but another vegan company, Oddburger.
Oh, Oddburger.
Oddburger
yeah.
is like, she
they
chose
were
to
in
work for
Oddburger.
you, not Oddburger.
Yeah.
Not that we don't, we love Oddburger.
Yeah.
We love you, Oddburger.
We do
Not
love
as much as
So
Plant Power.
Oddburger used to be globally local,
Right, globally local.
which actually got its start
Here, right?
here. It was a produce shop, but do you know why it went to become a restaurant?
No.
Because of our outreach at Ribfest.
Oh, yeah.
So one year, the owner, so we got really ballsy. And what we did is we actually got the LED truck to go around Ribfest while we were there, displaying graphic images
Yeah.
of pigs, and we did that.
Did it have audio as well?
It did.
Oh.
We had as much screaming in that as possible. Anyway, the organizers, I thought that this is it. They're going to
Yeah, they're gonna-
right? And interestingly enough, in February, like cold month, long ways away from Ribfest, the owner of Ribfest messaged me and says, I want to talk to you.
You feel like you're being called into the office, right?
Meet me at this coffee shop, and I want to have a talk with you.
Well, that's better than an alleyway somewhere. Huh?
Right?
I don't know if I'd go.
So me and Michael Kuipers, my partner in Animal Liberation Alliance London, went down there, and we were like, here we go. He's going to like give us the boot, and he's going to do it nicely, right? Because he invited us to go to this coffee shop. And lo and behold, he says, I want you guys, first of all, we cleared the air about that. And we said, is this about, the truck and us walking around with the signs and stuff like that? And he says, no. It doesn't matter what you guys do. I will never not invite you. Doesn't matter what you do. Oh, wow. Amazing, right? But then he says,
Keep your enemy close.
yeah, right? But anyway, then he says, I want you guys to show me that vegan food is profitable. I don't want you guys to give samples away. You guys won't be charged still, but sell vegan food and show me. I just want to see the numbers. Like, how did you do? I'm like, I'm an activist. I'm not a restaurateur.
Right.
But my friend James McInnes from Globally Local, the vegan organic produce store, has these meal kits. He's selling like meal kits with all the ingredients, and I'm like, and he also sells like hot food, like soups and sandwiches or something at lunchtime at his shop. I'll ask him if he wants to do this. So we bring him on board. I met with him that night at Starbucks near his house, and I'm like, James, I don't know what to do. You're kind of dabbling in food. Do you mind creating like something that we can sell at RipFest, and I'll get our volunteers at Animal Liberation Alliance London to supplement, your staff, and we can partner. So we married our two. We had ALA on one side and Globally Local on the other, and we made this massive corner.
Nice.
We were playing like really pumping up techno music, and so at RipFest he was selling. We called it the McVegan at the time. It became, the McInnes.
That's what
McInnes,
it was.
Right?
Yeah, because I remember looking at that and going, "Oh, how do they get away with it?" Right? Because the Mac and
oh yeah, no, he got like the
nasty
big
grams?
thick book from McDonald's when he was going to name his business like the McVegan. So that's why it never happened that way. But the thing is, he sold out. Like there was lineups like you wouldn't believe. Like the media came down. CTV interviewed us about.
Well, I remember
the success
seeing
of
some
this.
picture. There was a long lineup at his, and there were like just little, stubby lineups at the other vendors.
We were like the big hit of RipFest, and it was like a plant-based Big Mac. Right. We sold out. We had to shut down like 3 hours before the actual end of RipFest. We went through 500 pounds or was it 500 kilograms of chickpea patty?
Wow.
Yeah. He couldn't get it on Holiday Monday anymore. So at one point, like we were working together, it was in the evening. I remember James turned to me, he was all sweaty because he's like over the grill, like pressing on these grills. Remember the grill press, the handle broke off because we were using it so much to shape these patties. And he turned to me and said, Jason, I don't know if we completely comprehend what is actually happening here today.
Wow.
Right? And then within 2 months, he had a food
Did
truck.
both of you tear up? Like, was it a bro,
No, it was
bro moment?
No, I couldn't tell if it was sweat or tears. It was hot. It's like Labor Day weekend or like the August weekend. But anyway, 2 months later, he had his food truck, and Christmas Day, he opened up the first physical brick and mortar location that was Globally Local. And you know the story from there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Odd Burger, he's now trading on the stock market.
I own stock
and
with
he's
them
gonna be
too.
opening
I
a
never bought
location in
stock
New York.
before, but I've just recently, a couple of stocks from just vegan.
So I'm really proud of,
Very good.
of my contribution to making that happen by just introducing James to the idea of doing,
and he
of
ran
running
with it.
And he ran with it with his partner
Yeah.
and his wife now.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of what they're doing.
That's
And
amazing.
It's like you never know when you try different things and you just make connections and you put things
And
together.
the creative juice just starts to flow between
right.
everybody. Yeah, it's good.
This is just amazing what we can accomplish if we just think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We spoke earlier in the store, and you talked about you're only open on the weekends in the storefront there now, but during the week you also do deliveries. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's the opportunity for like during the pandemic. I mean, people,
made sense.
it made sense. I don't know if I'm going to keep that model going forward. I probably will. I mean, it's not very difficult. I maybe get 2 or 3 a week, so it's manageable.
And is that local? Do you
Yeah,
have it-
just local.
you're not going to be shipping up to Toronto for me?
Maybe.
Unfortunately, well, no, because like
Jason.
you know, the online vegan store market
Yeah.
is full.
Flooded.
True. Okay.
There's a lot out there.
Understandable. Yeah.
The only thing that I would introduce.
But you're cheaper.
I know I'm
Cost
cheaper.
effective.
I know.
Effective.
Yeah, but it's more or less like how it's more or less where is my time best
Yeah.
suited.
I understand.
sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I could be like in my basement boxing stuff up all the time, or I could be pursuing the avenues of trying to open up a market for simply eggless to have a market in London, right? So remember, it's a project.
And it sounds like that's well on its way
Yeah.
to coming
Yeah.
fruition, and in turn, flipping some of these currently non-plant-based companies transitioning over to that because it's more effective for them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, what it really comes down to them is really a price point. All the other benefits they realize they get it real quick. They understand. 5-day shelf life or 55-day shelf life.
Well, and as we were saying, even 55-day shelf life, even if you go a couple days after, you're not really going to kill anybody, right? But you have an
it's
egg
animal
sitting
free,
there
yeah.
for 2 days.
oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
2 extra days, yeah. Goodbye, Charlie.
For all of those that are interested in reaching out to you, both with the storefront and your activism, what are the different contact details that you'd like to put out there for people?
Sure. So Plant Power Solutions has email. We have a website. You can contact us that way.
Which is?
It's plantpowersolutions.ca.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very simple.
And your Instagram is plant_power_solutions.
Yeah.
And Facebook is
Plant Power Solutions.
Oh, I
Power
see a
Solutions.
pattern.
Yeah, it's
I
pretty
think
simple.
there's
Keep it simple.
And listen, people can, there's the London, Ontario Vegan Food Bank in town. And I mean, if people want to stop by your store and buy a few little items to give to the
To
food
support
bank,
them, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
bad
for
idea.
sure.
Hint,
Yeah.
hint.
And did you have any other activism-based things that you might want to give context for?
Not a lot going on out there right now. It's kind of quieted down, right?
Okay.
But yeah, not a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm going to primarily focus on basically getting once the business project kind of levels off. I'm going to get back to maybe doing some writing and definitely building that new workshop. So hopefully I can,
Oh, yeah, I'd
get
love to
that.
see that happening.
yeah.
So stay
we'll be
tuned.
coming back to Toronto to give more workshops.
We don't have that nice big space anymore.
figure
So
something
We'll find something.
We'll
you know.
find something.
Where there's a will,
There's a way.
there's a way.
we should have said it all together. Huh?
Yeah. Jason, thank you again for taking the time. I know that this was a busy day, especially considering that you had your new launch of the hot food options. But
The wieners.
we really do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks, Alec, and thanks, Sue. I mean, I love you guys. You guys have been really strong supporters, even though we've not agreed on many things, or not all things.
Yeah.
But we've always found a way to collaborate together,
Yeah.
and I've really appreciated that. And I wish more of the movement was like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
We will continue to collaborate until we can just not have to worry about
Yeah.
animal liberation in the future.
People don't have to be jerks to one another
Yeah.
in the meanwhile, right?
And thank
know?
you so much for coming down to my hometown, London, because it's really nice to see other vegan faces that I haven't seen in forever.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, we
It's been
love
a
you.
pleasure.
We love you. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
is a wrap.
Now you guys are going to open and close every show.